So I was watching this random, like 300 views response video to some leftist video I don't even remember the name of, from this alt-right dude who, talked about a lot of Jews and Zionists and that kind of stuff. And I was browsing the comments because it was a pretty boring video, and I saw a guy say, there's a lot of soy-encrusted ethnomasochism in these comments. Which is pretty stupid, obviously, but it got me thinking about the concept of, like a race traitor. And because I was thinking about it the other day, just randomly, I also thought about maybe how the idea of a class traitor compares to a race traitor, to see whether the two concepts map onto each other at all. See whether the horseshoe theory is there on that one. And no, they are. It's not the same concept at all. The simple answer for why that is because working class people and the capitalist class have a directly antagonistic relationship, which is to say that their goals as specific class groups, their class interests, are diametrically opposed. This has been explained, a lot by a lot of different people, but to say it again, capitalist class is, their goal is to extract the most amount of wealth, resources from for as cheaply as possible, whereas the working class's goal is to get the most out of as little labor as possible. There can be compromise, and that's what most of capitalism has been, is workers, chipping away at the advantage of the capitalist class. But ultimately, any sort of compromise cannot feasibly last. And, that's why socialism is going to happen. On the flip side of that, I mean, race as a fairly arbitrary, socially constructed role without any intrinsic meaning therein, they don't really have goals. A French business owner living in Paris is going to have pretty different goals and values from an Azerbaijani Muslim farmer, because there's a lot of white Muslims in Azerbaijan, if you didn't know. The idea that white is, or any race, is good enough of is strong enough of an identity to have any sort of goals to build around, or that can build any meaningful solidarity around, is pretty stupid. Especially in the case of white people who, have not had any racialized, on a broad scale, I guess, at least, have not had any racialized injustices done to them, unlike, say, black people in America who had slavery and Jim Crow and all that stuff. So there is definitely a lot more potential there for a certainly more racially based form of solidarity than, say, white people who don't really have much to rally around. Because that's the other, white nationalist thing is, we got history and we got fucking shit. But like I said, a French dude and an Azerbaijani dude barely belong to the same history whatsoever. Same with a French dude and a German dude. Same with people living in different regions of France. And I've made this point in another video, but yeah, the idea of white as an actionable category is completely fucking dumb. Whereas class, as its name suggests, necessitates a specific power balance, a specific power dynamic, uh, a lack of power on the side of the workers, and an excess of power on the side of the capitalist class. And so that is why workers, regardless of where they are, what their background is, what their culture is, or whatever, their religion, they are still able to have the same goal, which is to fix this power imbalance, remove the power of the capitalist class, and take all the power for themselves. That does not at all carry over to a racial idea, except maybe in certain places, certain like colonized places in the world where the ruling class is specifically like almost all white or something like that. But those are very specific instances. And so, but the white nationalist response to that would be, okay, well, sure, like inherently, I guess race doesn't mean anything, but like, in terms of like immigration or something, people come into like America, they have different values and different beliefs, different priorities, that kind of stuff. That's incompatible with America. Just look at the fucking ISIS and beheadings and female genital mutilation and all that stuff. Which is just, that's also really stupid. That also, like, if you think that that's a convincing talking point, then it definitely tells me that you haven't at all interrogated the idea in your head whatsoever, or that you are deathly afraid of non-white people, which a lot of white people are. Speaking personally, I was one of them, growing up in a pretty rural town with very, very few people of color. It was easy from just the culture, media portrayals, that kind of stuff, to just not feel comfortable around people that weren't white. But, you get older, you meet some people, you see that really are not that different. I know that dudes like Nick Fuentes like, oh, well, we're all pink underneath. Is that what you're saying? And at the end of the day, like, certain phenotypical categories, phenotypical traits aside, there's really not that much difference on a person-to-person level. There's the whole thing like, oh, well, other races have lower IQs, and that is true, but, like, for one, there's a lot of debate about whether IQ is a good measure of intelligence in the first place. For two, that's assuming that IQ is like a static thing that does not change based on your education. And for three, it assumes that IQ is inheritable, which is not ever been proven. There's some correlations, or studies that show correlations. Children tend to have similar IQs to their parents, although it's very unclear whether that is from whether that's from genetic reasons or because this parent, who is of a certain intelligence level, instills the same values in education and whatnot that they themselves grew up with. And I personally find that to be a much more likely example than non-white people are just not as smart. I think that's generally a better outlook to have. So yeah, I think that's good enough. A race traitor is not really a thing, especially not if you're white, just because historically that doesn't really make any sense whatsoever. White genocide is not a thing. White people aren't being killed. They're just becoming less of a large part of certain countries. If you are super scared about that, then you're stupid. Are you scared that when white people become 49% of the population in America, that like everybody else is just going to vote to kill us. I don't really think that's going to be happening. If I'm going to be honest with you, I doubt that that's going to happen. But that's just me.